On today's show, we break down the second preseason game for the Atlanta Hawks on this Monday evening into Tuesday. It was a little bit clunkier this time around. We'll get into a full breakdown, what was good, what was bad, and everything in between, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1819 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday here, and today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I also want to tell you at the top of the podcast, as I always do on Locked On Hawks, to make us your first listen each and every day. Please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast anywhere you find your podcasts. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon Music, we're on Overcast, we're also on YouTube on the video side. Please like this video as you're watching it on that platform. Subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends, and I appreciate everyone being here as always. If you're new to the podcast, what we do on this post-game episode is kind of dive into all of the angles, and it's still preseason. It's an exhibition game. There's a little bit of a different tenor as a result of that, but plenty to get into on today's podcast. And the Hawks go down by a final score of 104-89 at home in their second exhibition contest. It was a long layoff in between that was unscheduled. First game in 6 days following the postponement last week. And the last time the Hawks will play at home, actually, before the opener, when games actually matter, next week at home against Brooklyn. So if you listened to the podcast last week or watched the game or anything in between, you would know that basically the opener went about as well as it possibly could have from a vibe standpoint. Both just the young guys looking good, the offense flowing, it was entertaining, all those things. The follow-up today was a lot clunkier, is what I would say. It wasn't awful, but it was a preseason game in a lot of different fashions, I would say. It was not a disaster by any means. There were no major issues that I'm aware of. Nothing that I'm springing into emergency action about necessarily, but they didn't play with a whole lot of flow offensively for most of the night. And even when they did at times, especially in the first half, the shots didn't fall, so the results weren't quite what they wanted. At the same time, I'll come back to this later on. One of the takeaways that I would have from this game also, though, is that it was kind of a dress rehearsal in some respects, because it was the rotation for most of the night, almost three quarters, was pretty much like a game that mattered for Atlanta. As we'll talk about in a second and later on in the podcast, Onyeka Okongwu remained out for the Hawks, but all the other guys who are factors in the pretty much the opening day rotation were available to play. And for like 2.5, 3 quarters, they played 9 guys. They played a regular season rotation in this game. And it was probably the 9 that I would have guessed. There's one bit of flexibility that we'll talk about later on with the 9th spot, basically. But everybody else was kind of what you expect without Okongwu. And obviously, you would like for those guys to perform better together on the whole than when that happens, when you're playing your guys together. But this is also a chance that this is kind of the most dress rehearsal kind of game that they get along the way, because they have these 2 games left on Wednesday and Thursday, but it's a back-to-back. It's travel. They might punt one or both of those games. So my guess is this is the most quote-unquote normal game that they will play, and it's a week plus before the game's open, all that stuff. Beyond that, I think probably the most positive individual headline is probably Zaccharie Risacher, again, in this spot. He probably won't get the same level of national attention that he got last week when he made all the shots, basically. But he looked good in this game. That's a big takeaway. I thought Dyson was quite good, as we'll talk about later on. So there were some positives for sure. And I will also say the defense was pretty good in this game. But starting first on the offensive side, as my broad evaluation of this contest, it was not pretty on offense. It's one of those things where they faced a real defense for the first time. Now, I don't mean that to be as mean as it might sound about the Pacers, but the Pacers don't play great defense even at full strength. It was a preseason game, and they didn't have Miles Turner. So it was pretty much a basketball on the moon situation last week against Indiana, where it was a lot of free-flowing offense. And this time around, Philly without Embiid isn't a great defensive team, but they are a veteran team. They played their guys as well, with the exception of Embiid. For most of this game, they played a bunch of vets that know how to play. That was part of this. Now, Quinn talked post-game about not making quick enough decisions offensively at times for the Hawks in this game. I think part of that stemmed from facing a defense that was actually competent for the first time. Trae said post-game, when he did his availability, that the guys were still kind of figuring out where to be and play off each other. That actually was pretty evident, I thought, in this game at times offensively. But they were all still relatively upbeat. Like, this is not like it was not a solemn post-game after a loss. It's a game that didn't matter in the standings, and they're kind of just figuring it out as you might expect. Now, they were 13 and 44 from three. That didn't help, including a bunch of misses in the first half when they actually were playing better process-wise, I thought. They just didn't make shots, too, which made it worse. They shot 44% on twos in the game. That's gross. They had 20 turnovers. That was probably the single biggest issue in my mind. It was just sloppy. A lot of giveaways, like guys being in the wrong spot, etc. It's fixable, but that was the case in this game. And then they got to the line 11 times. That isn't enough either. They were good on the offensive glass. That's a positive sign. They won the glass in this game overall. But really the bigs were the only guys, other than maybe Risacher, who were efficient as scorers in this game. For example, Bogey and Bufkin combined to shoot 4 of 24 off the bench in this game. Trae had 9 turnovers. He kind of funny post-game moment when he said, with an expletive that I will not use here on the podcast, and he kind of laughed about this, but he was not caring about the turnovers in this game. He talks about wanting to get everybody involved. That was definitely evident in this game, but ball security was not a strength, let's just say. It was kind of messy all the way around. Do I think it's like damning for the future? Absolutely not. But offensively, it was unsightly for most of the game, even if the first half was actually better than the numbers probably indicated. Defensively, I thought it was actually pretty good on the whole for Atlanta in this game. So if you're trying to find a positive takeaway, other than maybe Risacher, defensively, it was encouraging in my mind. Now, I've also been saying the entire lead up to the season that the defense, in my mind, is going to be better. The personnel is better. I have optimism about the defense, generally speaking. In this game, they allowed exactly 1 point per possession, which is really good, of course. They forced 19 turnovers. They held Philly to below average shooting. They were excellent on the defensive glass in this game, with or without Clint Capella, which is a good sign. They were generally attentive to detail defensively, I thought, in this game. And I think it's basically already like kind of night and day on the perimeter defensively, especially when Daniels is on the court. Dyson is really good. I've been talking him up purposely on purpose. Like, he's really, really good defensively. That was already clear coming into the year, and even more so now. Trae said pretty flatly and plainly in the postgame that he sees one of the best defenders in the league when he looks at Dyson. And that is something I probably agree with at this point in time. He's really, really good. It's not just him. They're bigger, they're longer, they're more athletic, all those things. Risacher is doing his job defensively already this season, etc. Quinn talked about post-game, like kind of having a lot of good moments defensively, which I would agree with. Not necessarily stringing it all together in complete fashion, which is a very coach thing to say, but I think broadly speaking, they were good defensively. They lose this game comfortably, but it was not because of the defense. They just didn't make shots, they turned the ball over, etc. If it was just about the defense, I think you're pretty pleased with what you saw in this game. Again, exhibition stuff, etc. And yes, because I pointed out on the offensive side of the floor, you also have to say the Hawks did face the Sixers without Embiid and without Paul George for a half. So it wasn't like they were facing the best offense of the league, but they did a really good job on Tyrese Maxey in this game, no matter who was guarding him, and they played well defensively. So I'll stop there on the like broad takeaways to this game, but I think that's what I would say is it was clunky for sure. Does it like damn anything in the future? Absolutely not. But it wasn't the high flying, everybody's vibing out of control after the game like the opener. But also they hadn't played in 6 days. Like, there's some rust factor, even though I know they didn't play all year long before the first game, but kind of a weird schedule, all those things. The open practice yesterday that didn't mean anything at all. So long story short, I thought it was fine. They didn't play particularly well on offense, but nothing that I would be concerned about moving forward. And plenty of opportunity moving forward this week with 2 more games to kind of tighten things up in advance of the opener when the lights really come on next Wednesday. All right. We'll have more coming up on this game from what Quinn's talked about with Okongwu and an update there, including some audio from Quinn, as well as updates on Dom Barlow and Seth Lunny, who didn't play in this game, and my individual player breakdowns. All that and more coming up on the podcast in a second. But first, a word from our partners on today's show. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. This is a podcast about basketball, of course. But if you've ever seen a hockey game live, you don't really need to have me tell you actually that it's really awesome to watch hockey live, and it brings a sensory experience to the table. At Game Time, for example, you can get tickets for all kinds of sporting events, including hockey and, of course, basketball and more. Plus, you get tickets from music, for comedy, and for theater. And they have a new feature at Game Time called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams even easier to find. Game Time Picks filters out all the stuff that you actually don't want and shows you the incredible deals on great seats, so no wasting time for you when you're looking through thousands of options elsewhere. For example, there are awesome deals right now for the Hawks season opener next week against Brooklyn, including a pair of tickets that are available right now for $24 each, including fees. That's an awesome deal, of course. There's more of that happening all the time at Game Time. I love the feature at Game Time. It actually lets you turn on you actually view the seats through your all-in pricing. We flip on that switch. And if you do that, there are no surprise fees at the checkout screen at the end of the process. They also have the lowest possible price guaranteed at Game Time, or they'll credit you 110% of the difference of your tickets. Take all the guesswork out of buying tickets right now with the folks at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account at Game Time and redeem that promo code. It's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app right now today. What time is it? It's Game Time. All right, we'll dive back in now with a little bit of a look to the pregame portion of this and some context coming into the night. And Quinn was asked, actually kind of pregame, actually this morning, I should say, at shoot-around, about the approach to 3 games in 4 nights. And basically, he talked about the fact that they're probably going to rest some guys and not play everybody. It was pretty vague. I won't play the audio for you now, but it was pretty vague and kind of, it is what it is. But that's maybe going to kind of inform the rest of the week because we won't really know for sure. As a reminder, there are no injury reports in the preseason. Also, there are no active lists, so we're all kind of flying blind. But Quinn did kind of say on the record this morning at shoot-around that basically they might rest some guys and they're understanding they have to navigate this 3 games in 4 nights. And again, we didn't know at the time, but today they played a very regular rotation. So it should not surprise anyone that if they might not even play this kind of rotation at any point in the next 2 games on Wednesday and on Thursday. So that was Monday morning. Then in pregame, I actually asked Quinn about Okongwu after he missed the opener, and he's not been fully cleared to my knowledge. So the entire exchange is much longer, and I won't play the entire thing here, but it was interesting. And you kind of hear, if you were a Patreon subscriber, you might have heard this, that just how much Quinn does not want to answer the question, basically. But I will play the shorter clip when he came back around to it and actually gave a direct answer, or we say semi-direct answer by Quinn standards. So here's that answer right now about Okongwu after I asked before the game.
There's a good chance O won't play tonight, but hopefully we'll have him out there before the preseason is over, get him some company. As you know, he's been doing more practice, kind of ramping up, and I think we'll continue to to monitor that, all the return to play stuff. I get hesitant talking about these things because I'm not a medical expert, but I can be a communicator.
Thank you. All right, so after that, about an hour later, I reported, and I think I had this first. My apologies if I didn't, but I think I did, that Okongwu, Dom Barlow, and Seth Lundy would not play tonight. So they were all out. Lauren Williams of the AJC, who was on this podcast last week, actually said and reported that she saw Seth Lundy going into the x-ray room before the game. Quinn then confirmed that he at least tweaked his ankle. I'm not sure on the severity there for Seth. Unfortunate for him. He's been banged up a lot in the last year or so. That's why he didn't play. Dom Barlow took a fall at practice about a week ago or almost a week ago at this point in front of some media people. People kind of saw that. I've heard he's okay, but I was not surprised they held him out, and I think it was a back contusion from what I understand from that fall. He is day-to-day, so no surprise there. But anyway, in a regular game that the Hawks will be playing at full strength, they wouldn't be playing Barlow or Lundy anyway, but Okongwu is the focus there. And obviously you heard Quinn's answer. I would say it would not shock me if Okongwu didn't play this week, but Quinn did say in there they're hoping that he might appear in the preseason, and then TBD on how much he plays. I know there's always talk about starting lineups and all that stuff. If I had to guess, he probably won't start the opener after missing this much time, but that's just a guess at this point in time. Speaking of, the Hawks started the same lineup today that they did last week in the preseason opener. That was not terribly surprising to me, but it was notable for a couple of reasons. Number one, Bogey played for the first time this year, and he did not start. Now, that's not a huge surprise either. He was the 6th man of the year candidate last year. He doesn't have to start. He is the 3rd best player in my mind, but it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't start. He didn't look great in this game. Who cares? Bogey is Bogey. He's been playing all summer long. No worries there. But that was notable to me. Fans were, at least some of them, were focused on Hunter starting, but it's just not surprising to me. Like, we don't have to do this argument now, but whether you agree with it or not, it should not be a surprise to anyone. I'm not saying you have to agree to anyone. I'm saying that it should not be surprised to anyone if Hunter starts, because he's been starting the whole time. They've signaled, to the extent that they have signaled anything, it's that he might start the opener. And I understand Risacher is the guy everyone wants to see. I don't blame you. I think it'd be interesting. I'm all in on Risacher. It's going to be a very interesting player. But as far as like conventional wisdom, it wouldn't be crazy if he didn't start the opener, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it's still far from a lock that this group that started tonight is going to start on Wednesday next week. I mean, when it actually matters. But if you made me guess now, I would probably have to guess this lineup just because it's now started at both of the games. Last year, the Hawks went out of their way to not start the same lineup twice at all. This year, it was the same group twice. TBD, but that is what they have messaged so far through their actions, not their words. The words have been basically nothing to this point in time, so we're all guessing. Now, to the actual game. Early on, they actually ran a couple of nice, interesting out-of-bounds plays. There was one that Trae actually in Clint made a two-win game that actually worked well. I mentioned this earlier, but the Hawks, I think, process-wise, offensively, played their best probably early in this game. Jalen actually had a pretty bad turnaround fadeaway jump shot that I didn't like early on, and then he had a great sequence after that where he really got all the way to the rim a few times in a row. He's still learning to kind of push his advantages as an athlete, as a physical presence, but when he does that, it looks great. He's also great in transition, of course, and he had a couple of pick sixes in this game that were nice to see. Defensively, I thought, again, was really good early on. I think Dyson in particular was swarming at the outset. Philly started 1 of 9 from the floor, and those were contested looks. They had three turnovers in a row defensively at one point in this game. I think the Hawks were actually pretty intentionally playing some 5-out on offense, even with Clint on the court. Obviously, Clint can't shoot, but he was kind of stationed away from the rim a lot in this game, especially in the first half. There were some questions about the shooting, of course. Dyson, not a great shooter, etc. But there were some that was strategic, I think. Midway through the first quarter, there was a clock malfunction, and longtime sicko Hawks fans will know that's kind of been the norm in that building for a very long time. So old habits kind of die hard. But on the rotation front, again, it was a full-blown, what I would describe as a regular season rotation for most of this game. Bogey came in about 5 minutes in his normal 6-man slot that he's been in the last couple of years. Kobe played alongside him when he came in for Trae. They ran a stint with Bufkin, Daniels, and Bogey as the perimeter trio together, which basically means Bogey's kind of the 3, but Dyson's kind of the 3 too. Like they're the wing players together. That group might work in that you have a big point guard in Bufkin and 2 good defenders, Bufkin and Daniels around Bogey to kind of flank that, plus the offense of Bogey. So notable there that they would try that. Nance came in for Capella, as you might imagine after that. I thought Clint had a really good stretch in the first half when he actually had a duck in a nice pass from Dyson, had a lob dunk, looked springy in this game, drew 2 charges, I believe, in this one. So good to see him playing well, looking good. And then Risacher came in for the first time when Trae and Jalen came back in, which happened also in the opener. So that's been intentional. It seems like they're trying to play Risacher with Trae, with Jalen for obvious growth reasons. Also, they played this lineup offensively in the first half with Trae, Bogey, Risacher, Jalen, and Nance. That's probably their best offensive lineup they could probably use right now because it's 5-out with 5 guys who can all shoot. Plus, it has Trae, Bogey, and Jalen in it. Risacher is more dynamic than some guys are on the wing, of course. No Dyson for the defense, but because, defensively, that's kind of a challenge lineup in some respects, but offensively, that lineup could score anybody. We'll say that. They also had Jalen defending Tyrese Maxey with that group because if you look at it, like you got Trae and Bogey, and Risacher could probably kind of do it, but like they chose to kind of test Jalen a little bit in that lineup defensively. Notable to me. Risacher was aggressive in a good way, I thought, when he came in the game. That was nice to see. They were actually tied in the first quarter despite shooting 1 of 11 from 3 in this spot, which is encouraging, even though it never really fixed itself in this game. Everything was fine. It was just, kind of a challenge along the way. After that, it got a little bit dicey at various times. In the second quarter, the Sixers went on an 8-0 run and kind of led the entire rest of the way, basically. Trae got a technical foul. I'm not sure why he got that technical foul, but he was kind of the center of attention at some point in the first half. He got called for a push-off on a 3 that he made, and he was clearly agitated with the officials. There was a large double thumbs down signal that he gave to the officials through the crowd. Quinn challenged a first-half push-off offensively in a way you wouldn't in a game that mattered, but it was probably just Quinn trying to back his best player, a smart move in some respects, getting Trae's back there. The challenge was unsuccessful. People were asking about this. It was a letter of the law spot where because they called it on the floor, they couldn't overturn it. That was a silly call. It was very soft. Obviously, Martin did fall down, but that wasn't the reason that he fell down. Trae just made him look silly because he crossed him over. It's what happens. Anyway, Risacher actually had a pretty obvious young guy rookie moment early in the first half when he closed out hard on Andre Drummond Yes, that honored Drummond as a shooter, and then that led to a breakdown defensively. But he did have some nice mature plays too, where there's one where he gathered and faked around Drummond in the first half for a layup in a mature, under control fashion. Also, he was the roll man a few times. That's worked for the Hawks so far. I mentioned the really good offensive lineup for the Hawks early in this game. They had a very rough offensive looking lineup later in the half when they played Kobe, Dyson, Risacher, Hunter, and Capella. That group can probably defend like at a high level, but offensively, kind of dicey. Not enough shooting. I mean, you do have Risacher and Hunter that are shooters, but Kobe and Dyson and those guys and Clint is kind of tough. So they're still trying to figure out balance. I'm not criticizing. It is what it is. You want to see the lineups, but they played their best offensive lineup and probably their worst both in that first half at different times. They had 12 giveaways in the first half. Sloppiness there. One thing before we move on to the rest of the game, there was some terrible officiating in this game, and I don't really care about like the impact on the game as far as like what's losses, but the game flow was just brutal. It was a very, very long game for no reason. Lots of reviews, lots of stoppages, bad officiating, despite not even a lot of free throws, just no flow at all. That was their fault. And one more time, in the first half, they only played 9 guys. No Veet even, no Garrison even. We'll come back to that later on, but that was notable to me. All right, more to come in a second when it comes to the rest of the game, and also crucially at the end of the podcast, my player-by-player breakdowns. But first, a word from our partners on today's show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and basketball and football are both here now, of course, begin the season now with a great offer and a big return from FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and now you can find a lot of different information sets from the latest stats to live play-by-play and so much more on the same page when you can place your bets at FanDuel Sportsbook. Plus, you can start with a great offer from FanDuel, and that is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. You should also know that the app at FanDuel Sportsbook is really easy to use. They have all the stuff you're looking for in sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props. They have live betting, they have future bets, they have same-game parlays, and so much more. The app at FanDuel is safe, it's secure, and they cover the entire range of sports as well. NBA stuff, of course, WNBA, in the finals right now. They have NFL, college football, and hockey, and baseball, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started. And when you get there, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. One more time, visit FanDuel.com and check out America's #1 sportsbook. So some brief observations from the second half. Largely, it was not garbage time, but just kind of ugly basketball in the second half. They started Risacher after halftime, which caused a lot of us to be like, all right, what's going on here? And immediately, though, it was clear that Hunter was not on the bench. So it was clear to me right away when I saw that, and I was looking with Kevin Chouinard of Hawks.com. We were eventually told, at least I was told, that Hunter was not injured. That's all we got. Again, they don't have to give formal updates on player availability and injury stuff in the preseason, but I was told he was not injured. They just shut him down for the day. Of course, there was some joking speculation about trade stuff. It could be anything. It could just be planned rest. Bogey didn't play in the opener. Like, it is what it is. Like, it's a little bit weird, but he was not on the bench, so it wasn't like he was just like in street clothes at that point in time either. So it's a TBD. No other clarification other than I was told firmly there is no injury, but we'll see when we next see Hunter. But that was why Risacher started the second half. Also for Philly, Paul George suffered a hyperextended knee, so he was out in the second half. Hopefully that's not serious for him. But Trae and Risacher played together a lot in the second half. That was good to see. They had a nice splash together early on, kind of set up a layup early on. The Hawks were not thrilled at all when Caleb Martin tried a chase down block on Risacher. It fouled him pretty hard. It wasn't like a scrum, but there was some words exchanged. Dyson was right there in the middle of that, as was Trae. Risacher was fine, which is all that matters. But anyway, that's notable. Dyson had a nice catch and shoot 3 that I thought was like really encouraging out of a stoppage, out of a timeout, just to let it fly. No hesitation. Bomb 3 from the top of the key. Good to see that. And then he had a huge block on Maxey right after that as well. The first player to appear that was not in the rotation most of the night was Vit Krejci. And that gives me an opportunity to say this now. I don't know if this is definitely in stone as the top 9 in a non-Okongwu world, but there was 9 in this game. I got kind of a mailbag question I'll answer quickly right now. I think Vit Krejci is very clearly better at basketball at the NBA level right now than Kobe Buffkin is. Now, there are other things to factor in there. Number one, Veit is a point guard in some respects on the ball in the way that he can handle and pass, but he's not a traditional point guard. Now, Kobe isn't necessarily either, but he's much more of that. Plus, they're trying to develop Kobe. They just drafted him, same regime, a year ago, etc. So I wouldn't be stunned if they had gone with, or maybe would go with, Veit instead of Kobe and kind of run with a point guardless lineup, sans Trae. But for now, it was Kobe in both halves as the clear backup point guard. TBD on that. But after that, it was Garrison as the kind of 11th man when he came in. And then it was, I was surprised how long Trae and Jalen kept playing. I wonder if it's because the Hawks were struggling and they wanted to find some rhythm, but they played into the fourth quarter. Jalen played 29 minutes in this game. That was more than I expected him to play. 27 for Trae. That's a lot of minutes. I don't know why they did that in the fourth, but there you go. And I got to be honest, the third quarter was a total slog. Now, the whole second half was, but third quarter, they were still trying in the third. And the Hawks were 7 of 25 from the field and 2 of 14 from 3 in the quarter. Brutal. With 5 turnovers. And they lost the quarter by 2. It was 21-19. It was that gross. It took forever. Yikes. Fourth quarter, less exciting. They were down 15 points by the middle of the quarter. It got to be garbage time by the end. David Roddy and Mo Gay. They never went all the way into the bench, so no Keaton Wallace or Plowden or Harris. That's kind of it. But they played, I believe it was, 15 guys by the end, something like that. So, nothing. Well, I guess 14 guys by the end. Anyway, they went deep into the bench, but nothing terribly revelatory. Okay, to the players quickly here, and I won't go as much depth as I might in the regular season, just because it's legitimately preseason games. But off the bench in this game, the headliner is obviously Risacher. 14 points, 8 rebounds. He was 5-11 from the floor, 1 of 5 from 3. Had a steal, had an assist. Looked good defensively to me. Like I think I said this on the last podcast too about the opener. You couldn't really be more excited for him than you have been the first 2 games. I would encourage everybody to be reasonable. It doesn't mean he's going to just suddenly dominate, but he has been as advertised in a good way for the Hawks through 2 games. Length, acumen, shooting, versatility, all those things. Defense has been really solid for a rookie. It looks great. And that's all that matters. Like, if there is one single thing that I would say matters the most from these first 2 games, is that Risacher looks good. I'm not trying to overstate that, but as far as like you're trying to learn in preseason about combinations and whatever, but the biggest thing you can learn is about your rookie who has not played in the NBA before. It looks great. So that's a huge, huge, huge plus. Now, from there, Larry Nance Jr. was really good in this game, I thought, generally speaking. 6 points, 10 rebounds in 20 minutes, hit a 3, had 2 turnovers, but I thought he looked good. Like, I think he's been what they want him to be as well. Bogey struggled with his shot anyway. He was 0 of 3 on 2s, 2 of 8 from 3. I'm not worried about Bogey. Bogey's played a lot of basketball this summer. He's healthy by all accounts. He's their best shooter. He's a really good player. There you go. Garrison played 12 minutes, took 7 shots, 1 6 from 3. Same thing, whatever. Veit, when he got in, looked like Veit to me. 8 points, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 rebound. Played well. He still was on the first of the rotation, but he played in the game. Kobe struggled. I thought he was much, much better in the opener than he was tonight. So there was the negative reaction that you might expect. Well, I'll tell you about the shooting line, but I thought he was good the other night, not so much tonight. He was 0 of 5 on 3s and 2 of 8 on 2s. That's tough, obviously. Did have 5 assists. I thought his playmaking actually looked okay in this game. A couple nice passes that led to assists, or not even to assists, but some nice looks. But just as a finisher, not great. And 3-point shooting is 5 attempts, whatever. But he struggled in this one. He was a game worst minus 22. And I think that will prompt questions about what they're going to do. Again, he kind of answered some of them in the first game when he played well. Put him back on the table a little bit more tonight. I don't want to overreact, but that's kind of where they are through the bench lineups in this game. To the starters. Hunter played 15 minutes, didn't play the second half. 2 points. Had a rebound, just low usage, like was fine, but just didn't do much of anything. Had a turnover. That was kind of it. Dyson was really good, I thought. 7 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. He got a lot of praise post-game from Quinn, from Trae. He earned it. He talked post-game as well. Defensively, he was really good on Maxey. Again, I think people are still surprised because they haven't seen him play, but I've been trying to tell people all summer long, like he's a really established, already proven defender. The next step is the offense. Nice flashes there, too. A couple nice passes. Made the 1-3. Looked fine. I thought Capella looked good, actually, physically. I thought he was a little bit, not terrible looking physically in the first game, but not like explosive either. And he's an older guy at this point in time, but he was the only, he was +3 in the game, 10 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists. I think his actual, like his DHO game, his passing's been pretty good for Clint early. 5 away from the floor, had a block shot. I think he looked good. He was the only guy that played. I should say him and Dyson did not turn the ball over. But I thought Clint looked good. So outside of the two young guys, Risacher and Daniels, I thought Clint was probably had the best game compared to the normal baseline of all the veterans. Jalen was fine. 10 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, a little bit clunky offensively at 4 turnovers. Better in the first half than the second half. It was fine. Jalen was like Jalen to me. Trae was not good in this game. I mentioned earlier, he kind of laughed it off about the turnovers. And I think you can definitely kind of see that if you watch it back as I did before in my rewatch. He's definitely trying to get other people involved, like even more than usual. He's trying to be pass first. 9 assists, 9 turnovers. That's a lot of turnovers for one game. But 2 steals. He didn't play well, but he played more than I would have probably played him by the end. And whatever. So that's kind of it on the player-by-player side. I gave the stats earlier about the team stuff. Nothing crazy. But the Hawks, they lost the game. Takeaway-wise, for me, the defense was pretty good. Offensively, not so much. But Risacher, Daniels, check and check on the 2 new guys there. Before we sign off, it's a couple of big dates to keep in mind. I showed you already last week on the show, I think, but just keep in mind as we go into the rest of the week. So the Hawks play again on Wednesday in Miami. That is the rescheduled game from last week due to the hurricane. They're playing that game on Wednesday. They're not practicing tomorrow. So the next time that anybody sees the Hawks will be Wednesday in Miami. Then they go to Oklahoma City on Thursday. It's a back-to-back with travel. We'll see on how they handle that. Earlier I talked about this, but Quinn didn't really give any details. Just said that they might rest some guys. We'll see. Now, from there, they don't play again as far as games are concerned until the opener next Wednesday. But as I'm recording this podcast on the 14th, you're listening to it on the 15th, we are less than a week away from the deadline for Jalen Johnson's extension. October 21st is the deadline for rookie scale extensions, and that is Jalen this year. So that's a big topic in the next 6 days. That's also they have to set their opening night roster. Cody Zeller has not been around the team still. They have a couple injuries to deal with now, etc. But that's the night they have to declare their roster. And then again, the Hawks play a game that counts a week from Wednesday. So we are full speed ahead now. These 2 games will be interesting. I'm planning to do a podcast on Tuesday in between the games, so stay tuned for that. Hopefully that's going to come to fruition. Also, there is a scheduled Locked On Podcast Network roundtable episode that will drop in this feed, I believe, on Tuesday for some bonus content. So keep that in mind too. That won't just be my normal show, but that's a roundtable about the East and kind of broken down. That's a network thing. It's going to be a podcast feed. That'll be there. Also, as I said before, once games begin, I believe starting even Thursday, there will be the postcast of the Locked On Sports Atlanta crew after games in the audio-only feeds. They have their own YouTube channel, but they'll be in the audio-only feed of Locked On Hawks, so stay tuned for that. Don't be surprised by it when you see it. That's all I have on the PSAs, but a big week. It kind of begins today, but we're all downhill from here. Game today, game Wednesday, game Thursday. They travel home, practice the weekend, and then it's Jalen State's roster set, game on Wednesday, and we'll have full coverage of all that. So stay tuned. I have some travel later on this week, so it'll be a little bit touch and go on. I'm going to do my best to be as attentive as possible and give you the best quality that I possibly can while traveling. But in particular on Wednesday, because that game was not supposed to happen, that's going to be a challenge for me, but I will figure it out. Stay tuned. Please subscribe to this podcast anywhere you find your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, etc. Like the show on YouTube. Also subscribe there and tell your friends about the podcast as well. Follow us on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow my Patreon work, which is all my non-podcast content at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, that's all I have on this late Monday night into Tuesday. Stay tuned for much more coming up later on this week, and we'll see you all next time.